Hey, this is Miss Cooper here with your Week 9, Chapter 9 commentary video. We do have a document, okay? So we're going to kind of read and summarize. Please make sure you're taking notes and following along. So this document starts on page 17 and goes to 19. So on 17, we're going to start at the first complete sentence because you know I carry these on from the previous weeks. So up at the top it says, in the forefront of the civil rights marches were author James Baldwin, gospel singer Mahalia Jackson, folk singers Harry Belafonte and Odetta, and comedian Dick Gregory. In television and film, Nat King Cole was the first African American entertainer with a network television series from 1956 to 1957, but despite the singer's great talent, his variety show had trouble attracting sponsors. In the decades following Cole's death, many situation comedies were marketed with predominantly African American casts, and the large acting ensembles in dramatic series were often integrated. Red Fox and Damon Wilson starred in the popular series Sanford and Son from 1972 to 1977. One of the most acclaimed weekly shows ever produced was The Cosby Show from 1984 to 1992, starring comedian Bill Cosby. Keenan Ivory Wayans, star of the long-running satire sketch comedy show In Living Color, won an Emmy Award for his work in 1990. The Bernie Mac Show, a sitcom starring comedian Bernie Mac, won a Peabody Award in 2001. One of television's most watched dramatic telecasts was Roots, an 8-part miniseries first shown in 1977. A sequel, the 7-part Roots, The Next Generation, appeared in 1979. Based on author Alex Haley's real-life quest to trace his African ancestry, excuse me, the shows made other African Americans more aware of their rich cultural heritage. Achievements by African Americans in the field of broadcast journalism included those of Ed Bradley, who became one of the interviewers for the television news magazine 60 Minutes in 1981, Bryant Gumbel, who became co-host of the Today Show in 1982, a former anchor on a local news desk, Oprah Winfrey, started a popular daytime talk show in the 1980s that became a cultural phenomenon. She established her own television and film production company, and her media entertainment empire made her one of the richest and most influential women in the United States. Oprah. Blaxploitation films, such as Superfly, drew huge audiences in the 1970s, but they did not deal with the everyday experiences of most African Americans. From the 1950s, Academy Award winner Sidney Poitier appeared in a more genuine dramatic roles. By the 1980s, other actors were cast in parts that had not been written specifically as black roles. For example, Lou Gossett Jr. in An Officer and a Gentleman. In 1983, he won an Academy Award. Buddy Pictures paired white actors with African American stars such as Eddie Murphy, Danny Glover, Gregory Hines, who was also a dazzling tap dancer, and Richard Pryor. In 2002, Halle Berry became the first African American woman to win an Academy Award for Best Actress for her performance in Monsters Ball in 2001. African Americans Morgan Freeman, Denzel Washington, and Will Smith were among the most popular and acclaimed actors of the early 21st century. A completely original talent, director, writer, actor Spike Lee had total control over his productions, which examined contemporary African American life. Other prominent black directors were John Singleton, who wrote Boys in the Hood in 1991, and Matty Rich, Straight Outta Brooklyn in 1990. Literature, the poet Gwendolyn Brooks was the first African American to win a Pulitzer Prize for Annie Allen in 1950. In 1970, Charles Gordon became the first African American playwright to win the Pulitzer with his depiction of a black hustler poet in No Place to Be Somebody. The Color Purple, a best-selling novel by Alice Walker, won a Pulitzer in 1983. Toni Morrison's novel Beloved took the Pulitzer for fiction in 1988. And in 1993, Morrison became the first African American to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. The most accomplished African American dramatist the second half of the 20th century was August Wilson. A 2-time Pulitzer Prize winner between 1984 and 2005, Wilson chronicled Black life in a series of 10 plays, one set in each decade of the 20th century. Music. Almost all of America's popular music, including jazz, blues, rock, soul, and hip-hop, has its origins in black culture. Thomas A. Dorsey was the father of gospel music, and Harry T. Bullard arranged spirituals for the concert stage. Marian Anderson was the first African American to sing at the Metropolitan Opera House in 1955. Other African American opera stars include Leonette Price, LaJulia Ray, Grace Bumbry, Shirley Verrett, Jessie Norman, and Kathleen Battle. Arthur Mitchell, Alvin Ailey, and Bill T. Jones led outstanding dance troupes. Trumpeter Wynton Marcellus emerged as one of the great trumpeters of the late 20th century, winning Grammy Awards for both jazz and classical works. His brother Branford became music director for television's popular Tonight Show in 1992. Top-selling popular recording artists of the late 20th and early 21st centuries included Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson, Prince, Whitney Houston, Mary J. Blige, Beyoncé, Alicia Keys, and Usher. The hip-hop movement, which originated among African Americans in the South Bronx section of New York City in the late 1970s, produced many waves of rap superstars. In sports, the white-only barrier was broken in Major League Baseball by Jackie Robinson in 1947. Today, African American athletes dominate most of the professional team sports. Many of the outstanding players in the history of basketball have been African Americans, not least Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Wilt Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James. In football, we had Walter Payton, Jim Brown, Jerry Rice, Jim Marshall, Emmitt Smith, among many others, have set records. Hank Aaron held baseball's career home run record from 1974 until 2007, when he was surpassed by another African American, Barry Bonds. Rickey Henderson broke baseball's stolen base record in 1991 and set a record for the most career runs scored in 2001. Since Joe Louis became the heavyweight boxing champion in the 1930s, African Americans have been among the world's top heavyweight fighters, though tradition of black champions date back to Jack Johnson, whose prowess and prominence in the first decades of the 20th century prompted the search for a great white hope to challenge him. Moreover, for a time in the 1960s and 70s, African American world heavyweight champion Muhammad Ali was arguably the most recognizable person in the world. Arthur Ashe, Althea Gibson, and Venus and Serena Williams have all been at the top of the game of tennis since Jesse Owens won 4 Olympic gold medals in 1936. African Americans have excelled in athletics, track, and field. In 1960, Wilma Rudolph became the first African American woman to win 3 track gold medals in a single Olympics. Florence Griffith Joyner, FloJo, and Jackie Joyner Kersee were prominent medal winners in the 1988 Olympics in Seoul, Korea. Carl Lewis, Butch Reynolds, Edwin Moses, Bob Beamon, Michael Johnson, and Gail Devers set high-profile track records. In 1997, Tiger Woods, the son of an African-American father and Thai mother, became the first golfer of either African-American or Asian descent to win the prestigious Masters tournament and remain the game's dominant force into the 21st century. Yep, there's your document. Please take all of your notes and follow all instructions. Thank you for being here today.